All right. With that, let me say how pleased I am, really and truly, and grateful with the efforts of our students and their employees. And you know, we have been sharing the known active cases with internal audiences, and last week we posted those. I think there were 27. We promised an update each Wednesday because we certify the numbers, try to start certifying those at midnight on Friday from the previous 7 days. So it looks like today, or what was certified for last week, is about 46 known active cases of students and 3 employees. And last week it was about 27 to 1 or 26 to 1. The numbers were not unanticipated because we were quite aware of some Labor Day weekend off-campus events that had nothing to do with NSU. So I'm just letting you know we're already seeing the preliminary information that's coming in now by midweek. Those numbers will be declining as anticipated. So it really is amazing how well our people have done, how well our students have done. We have not had any major mass incidents. So again, thank you for what you're doing. What I can also tell you is that everyone is suffering a little bit from information overload or COVID or coronavirus fatigue. We've all heard it. We don't want to hear it. We're all living it. We don't want to keep living this way. But my personal opinion, based on reading a lot of literature, is that hopefully, starting in March, but hopefully before next October, things will be different. I do not share in the enthusiasm and optimism that we're going to have a vaccine by the end of October or before November. So I just think I think there'll be a vaccine, but I think I've seen what's happened with the Stanford effort. I'll let you read and come to your own conclusions. There will be a vaccine, but I think this is here for us, with us for a while. What I would also suggest to you, we are in the new normal, but that will quickly give way soon to the next normal. That what we do post-COVID will not be the same as it was going in front of this. Whether that means we simply no longer handshake, so forth and so on, the way we greet with each other, there will be a next normal. And so what I would say to you is that since March 11, the decisions that the cabinet's made, that the return to campus task force has made, has been guided by science at the recommendation of public health officials. So rest assured, we will not make decisions based on social media or the internet, nor everybody's opinion. We are listening weekly. I spent last Friday afternoon, for an example, with the part of the team of epidemiologists with the Cherokee Nation, talking about, okay, we've been in a red state, we've got redness all around us. At what point, how do we know when it's truly a much different or worse situation now? And I think at the end of the day, the short answer is when there's no specialty, in the hospitals there's no beds for with specialty physicians to serve the COVID patients. Some of you are healthcare, you've been on the front lines of this, you know, but I assure you that between Dr. Landry and I and the cabinet, we have weekly meetings with health officials, the health department, the hospitals, so forth and so on. Our decisions about how we conduct business, opening, closing, pivoting, will be based on science and the advice from health officials. So just rest assured, and it's been that way. It was because of those types of things that we moved fall break. We did not take away the 2 days from our employees because we want to recognize it's nice for employees to get a break. We just moved those to the first 2 days of Thanksgiving week. We fully intend to be on campus all 16 weeks of the fall semester. It is not our intention to pivot after Thanksgiving week. However, we will, in a heartbeat, if we're required to and we're advised to by health officials, or if even in advance of that, local health officials, public health officials tell us we need to do more. So right now, I just want to make it clear, we fully intend to have as normal of a fall semester in a COVID environment as possible. All right? Now, that also brings up spring break. I just finished a discussion with several other presidents and the chancellor, and this topic came up. What are people going to do in spring about spring break? It's all over the board. Some are going to delay start and give that week to their employees, giving it to them over the winter break. Some are going to start the semester later and not do anything other than keep the 16 weeks back to back. Some are looking at a staggered start by two different groups. Where we are today is that we are building the schedule to include spring break. The reason for that is primarily because we have a number of employees that in Oklahoma, spring break is not required, but all public systems of education are required to coordinate and have it the third week of March with a Wednesday in it. That's what state law says. So, again, we understand the whole idea of sending a lot of people out and bringing them back. But I would submit to you that perhaps with Oklahoma's cases, there will probably be more states by spring break that stop Oklahomans from coming there than them coming to us. So things have got to get better. But now, does that say that our schedule and our thoughts won't change between now and March? Perhaps between now and December. But for the reasons I've described, for our employees, faculty, and staff, to include faculty and staff, we're building the schedule with that. And if we have to pivot after spring break, like we did last year, and move everything online and do a lot more, we did it. We've done it before. We did it successfully. We can do it even quicker now. So just wanted you to know, Dr. Landry will say more about the spring schedule, that that's the plan, but it's certainly subject to change, again, based on the advice of public health officials. Okay? Now, there's several interim studies, but there are two topics, some of which have multiple studies. Some of you know that in February, the legislative body meets in session. In the fall, you can ask for a study of a certain topic. There are two topics that we're watching. Number one would be any study on changing questions that you can ask at admissions. In other words, are you a felon? What type of crimes did you commit? Because it could be that someone has one view about a marijuana distribution charge versus a predatory crime of sexual abuse. But there are those that believe that asking questions about prior convictions impedes progress of people who are on the road to recovery. So just know that that is being studied. Number two, a topic where there's been about 5 different interim studies, it is the police use of force. This is coming from national discussions that honestly should occur. But once again, we do not have security teams on our campus. We have sworn police officers. So if there is, our officers are trained to use, there's any number of, whether it's hand-to-hand combat type, use of tasers, those types of things, all the way up to deadly force. We have an enormous amount of training that we expect our officers to complete. But there was a lot of discussion, so I anticipate some law changes that may ultimately affect law enforcement for all of us. So we're watching that. Next from the Capitol would be questions that I get about state revenue. Where's the state of Oklahoma in not only next year, but where are we in fiscal year 2021? What I can tell you is that even in a COVID environment, the state is holding its own. And that's actually pretty good when you think about it. And what I want to say is, if you go back from August to August, and then you compare it to the year before, August to August, in all revenue sources, Oklahoma received $3 million more this August than it did last August. $3 million more. Now, there are about 70 different funds that revenue comes into the state. If you look at gross receipts as of last week, as of last Thursday or Friday, gross receipts are down about 4.6% from a year ago and based on the projections. However, some of the categories are up. Use tax is up 7%. What is use tax primarily? Internet purchases. Internet purchases. And this would be a much different scenario, except that Amazon and others agreed to start paying sales tax about 4 years ago. Well, we passed different legislation. But before, you were on an honor system to report internet purchases and submit to the state its taxes. And I know everybody was honest. But use tax is up 7%. Sales tax is down 2%. Oil and gas is down 59%, which equates to $92.8 million. Now, again, as an oil-dependent and an oil-producing state, that's a critical. We built the current year's budget with $54 a barrel for oil. Last week, it was at $37.49. So those projections are not, those realities are not reaching the projection, but other areas are bolstering, or propping up is a better term, propping up the state. You go back, and I pulled it yesterday, because last week it was 11. Last night I pulled it. There are 12 oil rigs working in Oklahoma today, or as of last night. There were 105 a year ago yesterday. So that tells you the state of the state. But I want to be cautiously optimistic in having this discussion with you in that we made the adjustment to this year's budget. We reduced expenses and then we plugged in one-time money to get through the year, but it was cash money. It was real money. It wasn't projections. I'm cautiously optimistic unless the economy has to shut down because of the public health threat grows larger, that we can get through this year. And again, I'm glad to be almost October without a revenue failure, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we can get through, and I feel good about that. What does that mean for us? Let's bring that down to NSU's budget. You're going to see that Dr. Freeman will talk a little bit with specificity about our enrollment numbers. As we built the Budget Oversight Committee and the Cabinet built the budget, we looked at the national literature that was saying that colleges on average, their enrollment is going to be down 15%. We built our budget with an 8% projected decline in credit hour production. What I can say is that our actual enrollment far exceeded, in a positive way, that projection. In other words, we're off a little bit, but we're not off nearly what we projected. So there's a very, Christy Lansall and I will be submitting a budget revision to our Board of Regents in October, including in that, as I teed up in the June budget hearing, will be a request to have a one-time stipend in the November paycheck that's equivalent to what we've done in past years. We were not able to do that last year, so stay tuned. It's not been approved, but it will be submitted, and I talked to the board about this in October. So we're doing a great job. Let me say that compared to not only the region, but in the state, we've got sister institutions, junior colleges that are seeing enrollment declines in double digits. We've got a couple in the state that have slight increases. Where we are is it's not by accident. It came about from a lot of hard work by a lot of people across our 3 campuses. So thanks for your effort. We're doing well, and so I'm so glad to be here today to visit with you. And with that, I'll come back after a while and we'll do Q&A, and I'll introduce Dr. Debbie Landry.
Thank you, President Turner.
Thank you, Dr. Landry.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is indeed good to see you. I know I've been here a few times since, of course, March began, but it's always good to lay eyes on you and be able to tell you in person what a great job you're doing. And if you're joining us on the recording later, just know that we wish you could be here and hope you're well, and look forward to seeing you when we can see you. I just have a few things to add from kind of updating from a note from the provost that went out a couple of weeks ago, and I will be working on the next one next week. HLC is coming in October next year, around the 18th to 21st. So those of you that are on a criterion committee have been notified of your assignment. Those committees have met for the first time and now are well into your work, their work, of collecting evidence to support and talk about that standard. It's a lot of work, and I appreciate that. I know Dr. Fly, all of the committee chairs meet even more often than the committees themselves, so it's a chunk of time, and I appreciate it. It's important to our institution. That work will go toward the evidence and the documentation that will be in the self-study. That comes out, it's due at the end of December. And if you're saying, well, gosh, I wish I could have been on a committee, but I'm not, but you are still valuable in making sure our visit is successful by doing all you can do to keep our website updated about your program, about yourself. If you're a faculty, digital measures, keeping that updated. It's critical to the success of our HLC visit. So everyone has a part to play, and I appreciate the roles of all of you. President Turner mentioned the spring schedule is being developed. In fact, it's just about complete. It will be visible to students at the end of September, the end of this month. So they'll be enrolling, priority enrollment mid, what would have occurred there that week after when fall break was scheduled. So that's coming soon. It will look about like our fall semester look in terms of how courses are delivered. Approximately 37 to 40% of classes will be in person, and then the rest will be, the 60% or so will be in some form of virtual delivery, whether it's a parallel link to an on-ground course, or blended, or completely online. That's meeting the needs of our students, the request, looking at what has supported them this fall. So going forward to spring, that also helps us, that reduced footprint of on-ground courses in keeping our 50% capacity of courses, social distancing where we can within a classroom space, but keeping that space within the classrooms. The larger courses, we've asked department chairs, 40 or more, make sure you split that class or consider an online section of that class to keep the cap low. It's, as you can imagine, a little more difficult with the spaces that we have to promote social distancing or even a 50% capacity of a room space when it's a large class. But everyone's worked so hard, department chairs especially, and deans working over the past, over the summer up until the 11th hour of when fall kicked off to tweak the schedule. So we kept good notes on what we did for fall, and hopefully it's a little smoother for the spring section. But rest assured, we'll be ready to tweak where we need to keep our faculty and our students as safe as we can during these challenging times. Fall commencement, we have just sent an email out to our students that anticipate being able to walk in December, that they will have at this moment anyway, they will have an in-person commencement at the event center. However, it will be limited to the student that's graduating or anticipating graduating. We're also inviting the spring and summer graduates to come back. And faculty will be invited, as well as administrators and then the support staff, but it will not permit at this time any guests from attending. So a lot of details to work out, and we'll publish more on our commencement webpage as those details become finalized. I know we had a team, IT folks and people from academic affairs in the event center, student affairs. I know Seth was there. looking at the space, what can we do to make sure we have enough seats in a safe way in the event center. So a lot of work behind the scenes again that's very much appreciated. And that's about all I have, except we're staying in that nimble environment, so I appreciate your patience as we adjust accordingly this fall and in preparation for spring. And be sure to write your questions down, so I'll try to answer them after we're all finished. And next, Dr. Freeman. We're ready to hear from you.
Good afternoon.
Good.
Just a couple of quick updates, just on a few kind of like student-oriented pieces, but wanted to let you know that we have rolled out a new system that really is a student organization, student engagement platform for our students. And so this would be if you are advising groups or working with any sort of like student group entity. Oftentimes they'll have to put in their membership and who all the leadership is into the system, and it's an easy way for them to communicate. It's also a way for them to apply for funding and that kind of stuff throughout the year. And so just wanted you to let you know that that's a new platform that you'll hear about. It's called Presence, but our old system was called Hawklight, and the new system will be called Hawklight. So, but it's a new system, and so they'll be entering in all that information if they haven't already been asked to do that. But I at least wanted you to be aware that that system was happening and changing over. Also wanted to let you know that Dr. Brennan Miller is the new director of admissions and recruitment. He has been on with us for a few weeks now, but we have had a number of staffing changes from an admissions and recruitment perspective. We had all of our recruiters change over and those kinds of things. So you probably were engaged in some training stuff over the summer to get to meet a lot of that new staff. Brandon at that time was not with us, but wanted to at least let you know that some of the resources to connect with to help push your programs. When we get out there, we want to represent you as well as we possibly can. So feel free to reach out to him if you have ideas, questions, or anything like that. Also want to let you know that our Riverhawk program is now up for the upcoming year. And so if you know of somebody that wants to apply to NSU, or somebody that's kind of struggling from a financial perspective, that's a way for you to help them get their admission application waived. And so if you have questions, you can contact the admissions and recruitment staff or myself, and we'll make sure you get the appropriate link to be able to do that. So that's, again, a Riverhawk program. Also wanted to let you know that the Fafsa will be opening up on October 1st. If you have students that need to get their information in for the coming year, it's a big process for the bulk of our students, and so just being aware that that is happening and you can encourage them. I also wanted to just mention a little bit, we have had a number of student events on all of our campuses, and we have been trying to be as creative as we possibly can, whether it's making sure that they're virtual or having some sort of blend, so that there's some virtual components, but there's also some in-person components. And our experience so far is that both options are sought after and wanted. But the one thing that we have noticed is that our in-person events usually fill up the fastest. Our students still want to be engaged in that way. And so we're trying to figure out ways to do that as productively as we possibly can. So we are actually getting ready to have a senior day, which is a recruitment for incoming seniors. And some of them may be focused on Muskogee elements, but the predominant will be the Tahlequah area. But that filled up, we had a slot for 100 students, and that filled up within about 3 or 4 days. And so we still have plenty of room in our virtual option. And so we're learning as we go here, trying to figure out creative ways to do that. So what I'm saying to you is that if you have suggestions or ideas, or if you think of things that could be creative ways to reach our students, feel free to let us know. I think we're all kind of learning the best ways to interact with our students. Our business is engagement, whether it's engagement in the classroom or with them socially, helping them gain life skills and those kinds of things. And so we're trying our best to figure out how to do the business that we're good at effectively in this kind of environment. So we definitely want your feedback on that. And also to let you know that our career services area is doing some of the same pieces. We have a whole docket of our career services events that we would normally have, whether that be interviews, internships, job opportunities, and those kind of things. So that stuff is, again, we're trying to mesh the virtual and the in-person environment. Same thing that we're doing from a recruitment perspective. And so as you see those emails out, or see them coming out, make sure you're looking at them, seeing how things are different, because we will not hardly do anything exactly the same as we have done in the past. And so just being aware of how that kind of functions and works in this current environment. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that October 19th through the 23rd is National Transfer Week. And especially our branch campuses have a large number of transfers, but at the same time, more than 50% of all of our students on all three campuses are transfer students. And it's an important part of our population, and we're trying our best to recognize those students, making sure that our policies, our procedures are in line with their needs, that we're finding ways to keep them engaged. One of the things that we have learned through this process, and Dr. Landry and myself have been on committees for numerous years now, talking about transfer students. And we've made many adjustments, but one of the things that we have learned is that throughout our campus, our faculty and staff sometimes aren't aware what the differences for our transfer students. What do they need? How does that differ from our first-time, full-time students? How do we reach them most effectively? Or even what our percentages and our numbers are and stuff like that. So we're doing our best to try to make some of those tweaks and engagements to really impact that population. It is a very important element of our university. And the last thing, I know that Dr. Turner had already mentioned this, was kind of where we ended up from an enrollment perspective. And he'd already mentioned that when we went through that process, we budgeted for an 8% decline in our enrollment. And one of the things that in March, when kind of the COVID stuff really hit us the hardest, at that point in time, we were projecting an increase in our enrollment. We had full faith in the process that we were doing, whether that was from a recruitment perspective or the retention efforts, all the things that we were doing across the board, all the engines were starting to fire, and we saw some things really moving well. Well, when COVID hit, we were up around about 7% in our projections. And we had to kind of really reshift as we saw stuff occurring across the country. National experts were expecting that there would be 15% declines in enrollment across the country. We debated as a cabinet kind of like, what does that look like for us? And so that's where we got to that 8%. And the reason why, somebody asked me the other day, like, why did you do 8% instead of 15? And it's because of all the efforts that we had already saw happening. We felt confident in our ability to do better than what the national average was going to be, or was expected, I should say. And as we have went through the summer and really worked hard, whether it was on our retention efforts or recruitment efforts, across the board, we were able to see ourselves at the start of the census date here, Dr. Turner mentioned, at negative 2.6%. And so that is a significant difference from the 8%, especially from a budget perspective. And so that's where we were excited for Dr. Turner to get to share that news about where we were at from an enrollment perspective. And just a couple other highlights I just wanted to bring up is that our first-time, full-time retention rate was up this year for the highest it's been for 7 years. And so, again, a significant achievement from that perspective, especially knowing what we're navigating from a COVID perspective. There's been a lot of time spent on trying to really help students feel more comfortable and confident, and even parents, and even faculty and staff for that matter, about what we were doing, what the plan was, and how we were going to be nimble and be able to offer options all across the spectrum. And so you also, we had our graduate numbers were up significantly, around 15% in credit hour production, and so some significant efforts there. And then, and just as I mentioned from an international perspective, we were only down 7 students from last year from an international population, which is way better than the national average if you look at what's going on across the country. And while we may not have a massive international population, that's a big deal for the efforts that have been done there. And so there's, even though we are down this negative 2.6%, and everybody would love to do better, it's definitely a time to celebrate all the efforts that have been done across campus. And that's, whether that's from advisors to the faculty and the staff that have done outreach, and then just our recruitment efforts and those things. So I just wanted to take a second to say thank you. Really appreciate everyone's efforts. One of the things that we've talked a lot about is that the COVID has been an exhausting piece for everybody. And it's easy to get frustrated with one another because you don't see all the moving pieces and all the parts, and you have all the day-to-day job things you need to do, plus you have this kind of crisis that you're dealing with. And the institution as a whole has really pulled together. We've spent significant amounts of time trying to manage all of the pieces, and it's really benefited and paid off for us. And so, again, thank you guys very much, and very exciting news to share. So, and we can answer questions later on that, but Christy, you're up.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I know it's getting late in the afternoon and comfortable in those chairs. And a little dark, so I'll try not to put you to sleep. Just a few updates since we all got together last. Quick update on Seminary Hall. Phase 3 is progressing very well, and we are on target for completion in the spring of 2021. Wilson Hall, since we did meet our budget projections, as you heard earlier, we are going to proceed with that project to the last phase. Construction document development is almost complete, and that is scheduled to go out to bid on October 5th. And our projected completion date for that project is spring of 2022. We're also doing a little bit more work at the Beta Pond and Town Branch probably this semester. Well, we hope so. We're waiting for some approval from the Corps of Engineers, and we'll get started on that project. The women's tennis restrooms, they poured the concrete slab last week, so we think that project will move along pretty quickly now. Specifically to Muskogee, the Sinar roof is currently being designed and in the development stage, and we expect about the 100% construction documents to be delivered on December 4th. So that'll be our next large roofing project. Opening enrollment this year is scheduled for active employees for October 23rd through November 8th. This year we're offering what's called a passive enrollment. So if you're happy with your benefits, you don't have to do anything. There'll be 2 webinars put on by Phyllis Chappelle and our NFP consultants to give you a little bit more information on your benefit structure if you'd like. They will be conducted through Zoom, and those webinars will be Tuesday, October 20th at 10 a.m. or Wednesday, October 21st at 3 p.m. Also wanted to let everybody know that we are getting ready to do our next computer replacement project. There's about 800 computers that are on the list now, so if your computer is ready to be upgraded, you'll be getting a call from IT soon. Also with IT, they asked me to let everybody know that we are working as fast as we can to get several of our Zoom rooms converted over, the ITV rooms converted over to Zoom as quick as we can. We're having a little bit of difficulty ordering parts right now, so we've had a lot of delayed shipment and things on back order because of the demand right now. And we also did, I wanted to let everybody know, we received a gift from the Cherokee Nation for about $100,000 that will allow us to do a few extra Zoom rooms also. So again, thank you for being here, and I look forward to any questions you have. Dan?
Thank you, Christy. And as Christy said, thank you all for being here this afternoon. We understand you all are incredibly busy, but to take the time to come and participate in this, we're very thankful for that, to help be able to not only be here to answer questions and have this conversation, but then hopefully you all can take this information and share that with others, your colleagues across the campus. I did want to give you all a little bit of an update on our website and the transition of where we're at. Starting tomorrow, we will be training the content management team. So those responsible for putting the data onto the website, all the copy, we will be training them tomorrow in our new software. And so while that training is going on, they're going to learn about all of the containers, how to put on new images, how to increase our SEO. So they're really going to get a nice opportunity to really learn about website content management, again, beginning tomorrow. However, today, we're taking a snapshot of our current website. And whatever is on our website as of today, we're going to use that to migrate the data into the new environment. So, moving forward, if there's a change that's needed on your web pages, please continue to make those changes on the webpage. However, just know that you might have to duplicate that effort, okay, as we're in this little bit of a period here, a week or two, where you might be working in one web environment to have updates, but as we are getting ready to roll out and migrate into the new website environment. So update your digital measures. Take care of all the things as is necessary for HLC. There are some items that we're just going to be able to pull over, faculty directory information, those types of things. But again, if it's something that's critical on your website, go ahead and make that adjustment. Just take a note, and then you'll be able to have your content management personnel go ahead and duplicate that effort, okay, into the new site. With the new site, we do have a new calendaring feature. So currently, we have a variety of calendars scattered all through the website. They don't talk to each other, okay? Moving forward, we will have one central calendar, and within that calendar, there will be a variety of filters. And so you and your content management team will be able to go in, add events. You'll be able to, when viewing the calendar, you can select academic affairs, student engagement, career services, maybe university relations. And those are the events that you will see on that single calendar. And everything else will filter out. It's independent of all other users. You get to control what you see on that website calendar. You'll also have the opportunity to submit events to be posted on the website. So maybe you don't work real closely with your content management team in your department. Maybe that person is actually in your college, but in a different department. You can submit an event on your own. We'll review those events, take a look, because a student could submit events for a student organization or whatnot. We'll review those and then publish those to the calendar. So that's going to be a great feature where people don't have to go all over the website and look at 40 different calendars for information. You'll be able to find that in one location. We're also rolling out some workshops. One of the first workshops that we're having is our licensing. It's a branding and it's a marketing workshop. You all hopefully have seen that email that has gone around. We're hosting this on Friday at 11 a.m. It's going to be a virtual workshop. I encourage you to sign up, participate in this. We're going to work with those in attendance and really kind of show you how you can utilize the institutional brand, our imagery, and use that in your recruiting efforts. Use that when you're visiting with community members. And so you may actually find something, J.D. Young will be there, and so J.D. Young may have a product, whether it's a pen, whether it's a keychain, something that you want to use, something very specific. Maybe it's a manufacturing alliance component. Maybe it's a keychain that's shaped like a stethoscope, okay? And you want to have that for the physicians that you're meeting with. And so you'll be able to learn how you can print those items. And again, the use of our licensing and branding options. We'll have other workshops throughout the year, whether it's about accessibility, whether it's how to design flyers, how to maybe increase your web content, making sure that we have all the metadata and keywords and everything's in there so that you have greater searchability within your programs. And I also wanted to share with this group today that, as Dr. Landry mentioned, that we have HLC that's coming up here in about a year from now. Well, we'll be releasing a video here very soon, kind of making a formal announcement, and we're going to do so with Rowdy. Rowdy's got a few new moves he's excited to show our campus community, so just a little teaser there. Be on the lookout for that video coming soon. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch base on how the current high school students and really adult learners are consuming media. Right now, all the research is showing that they're consuming media that is associated with movement and or video. So as we move forward, we're going to be producing a lot more videos. We're going to be producing a lot more ads social ads, display ads, and have movement within it. We're not abandoning our static ads at all. We're not going to abandon the newspaper efforts because there is a population that's right for, that is looking for that type of engagement. However, we also know that we need to diversify. And so that movement piece, that video piece is going to be very important. So on the week of October the 11th, I know the 11th is a Sunday, but that week, we will actually be filming here on our branch campus. Here in Muskogee, we're going to highlight this campus and some of our new commercials. We're going to highlight some of the programs that are right here in Muskogee. And so we want to make sure that you all are aware of that. We may be tapping some of you to star in some of the commercials. We may be asking some of you to see if you would open up your classroom, open up a lab space so we can go in and use that as a part of that marketing opportunity. Again, thank you all. I appreciate you greatly for being here. Dr. Turner?
I apologize, I forgot one more thing I was going to let everybody know. I understand that there was a leak from the clock tower, and we had the contractor here yesterday, and they're fitting some flashing. I think the flashing is separated from the brick that's up there. So we're going to get they're supposed to be on campus tomorrow to get that repaired.
Thank you. Very good. Two more things before we get to the Q&A that I wanted to mention to you. Where are those of you that like athletics? Raise your hand. At whatever level. We're part of, if you know anything about the NCAA, there are 3 levels in intercollegiate athletics. There's Division 1, 2, and 3. The big difference in those would often separates the 3. Number 1 are scholarships. How many, how much, so forth and so on, or the lack thereof. And then certainly sometimes size, those things. So you have the Division 1s in Oklahoma would be like OU, OSU, University of Tulsa, and then of course most of the comprehensive regionals are Division 2. And so Division 2, there's restrictions on scholarships in some situations, but it's regulated by the NCAA. As the COVID virus took its toll, the NCAA made an announcement for Divisions 2 and 3 that there would be no championship games for fall sports. So in other words, if you play, it's not going to matter. So, and then number 2, they implemented some very strict guidelines that they call Resocialization Principles. The Resocialization Principles, primarily the big ones, other than movement of people, what you can do, which we're already doing, is that prior to any competition, everyone involved with that sport has to be tested within 72 hours and have a negative result. And so if you're going to have a football game, a home game, and even if you didn't have a band, if you had just the team, the athletic trainers, and all the coaches, we're talking about the need to have to test about 140 people starting on Wednesday and having the results. I can assure you there may be some tests, but most tests, including the Abbott test, how many have heard of the Abbott, the modified, they're not readily available unless you have symptoms. So that would require us to have some type of a private firm that's going to come in, do the testing, and with a huge expense. And so that's ultimately, so the athletic directors of our conference got together. They made a recommendation to the President's Council of our conference that we postpone any fall sports until January 1. So the presidents got together, they accepted the recommendation, passed it unanimously. So that's why there have not been, although there are some high school games, and you're seeing the Big 12 is playing some, you're seeing that the Pac-10 is going to play some, or so they say. But once again, many of the Division I schools have a medical school on their campus that can do the testing as part of its operation. We have optometry, we have other health programs, but we're not a testing lab. And so, so that's what out of concern for health and safety, what would the game day experience look like, the cost, the added cost. Unanimously, we voted that we would postpone. Last week, we had a second meeting of the President's Council. There weren't clear recommendations from the athletics directors or others, but there were 2 items to be voted on. Number 1 would be that we could have 4, football could have 4 competitions in the spring, 4 games. But what that really means would be a game could also be considered an organized practice, where I understand that could have different parts of it. Another team would be involved, okay? It could be a scrimmage, or it could be a real game, non-conference game, but it could be a team within the conference. We unanimously voted to allow there to be 4 games as long as, again, we met all the health criteria. The second vote was to say, okay, although 6 weeks ago we said there would be no conference games, no football games until January, there was a measure that we were asked to vote on to allow MIAA schools to independently schedule games for the current fall semester. Now, again, you perhaps you're thinking like me, well, 6 weeks ago we made a very public announcement that we didn't believe it was safe to play football in Division II. And now we're at a meeting where perhaps 1 or 2 schools saying, well, we want to play independently, and that failed. So that doesn't mean that because the bylaws are almost silent in the MIAA, it doesn't mean that someone in one of our conference schools may not try to set up some independent games. So I just wanted you to know that has occurred, and don't know what that means. But, and I believe me, I know our athletes, they're programmed to play, they've conditioned all their life to play. It's probably a mental health. It would be good for their overall mental health to play, but we also have to be concerned not only about their safety, but the safety of our students, coaches, and when they go home and see grandma, honestly, or someone who has a compromised immune system. Lastly, we have been talking on the task force that I participate in, and I should have said this. We get guidance and seek input from Tahlequah, Muskogee, and Broken Arrow. This is not a political statement. The city governments in each of the communities have addressed or are addressing the COVID in different ways. For example, only Tahlequah, of the 3 cities where we have campuses located, has a mask mandate. There's an example, okay? So what we have done, with that approach, that is the most conservative, or what some might say is the most severe. We've worked along with that. But I know from many of those weekly meetings, there's not enough testing for everyone. So after we saw the Emmy Labs out of Norman that has really perfected mass testing through drive-in, we saw them do this at the University of Tulsa. They've been to OU, they've been to Central State, they've been to Southeastern. So I invited them to host a drive-through, not for NSU, but for the communities, and just simply use our parking facilities. So tomorrow at Tahlequah from 12 to 6, they will be there. It takes 10 minutes. There will only be 3 cars in a line. You have to schedule an appointment, and it's almost seamless. On Friday, they will be on this campus from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. So if you've ever had an interest in being tested to see, hey, maybe I'm asymptomatic, right? I mean, that could happen to any of us. There's that opportunity. It's free of charge, and you'll have the results no later than 2 days. So please, now Broken Arrow, I have offered the Broken Arrow campus. Dean Wood somehow got lost today and ended up here instead of Broken Arrow. But I invited them to come there also. That has not occurred, but they were, at the time we could talk, they were already trying to find a place in Muskogee, and then we just added. So there is an open invitation to do that. So please tell your friends, neighbors, again, go into the Indie Labs and sign up to do that. So with that, that is the formal part of the presentation, and so we're going to turn this off and